Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H Event Space. You are tuned into an essentialist approach to editing photos from a compact camera, hosted by Sony. For that, I'd like to welcome Maher Ismail back to the program. Maher, talking editing today. I know you love it. Yeah?
Absolutely.
It's
I
your
am so
thing?
excited. Super excited.
I'm not as
I'm super
excited
excited for the
as you about
viewers.
editing, but I'm excited about watching this. I love to watch other people's take on editing. I think for me, it's just the redundancy. I like, a picture here and there, but I can't do the whole batch thing. I can't do thousands of photos at a time. It's
Oh
not for
yeah,
me.
yeah.
Not for
I
me.
think hopefully by the end of this session, you will be hyped, more hyped, 2% more hyped to edit. If I can get that out of you, then this is a success.
If you get me to open up my editing software in the middle of this while listening, then I'm going to consider that a win. That means
Okay,
I'm going to be,
that's
it's
fair.
like the primer that'll be getting me ready for, an editing session later today. So I'm going to
Okay,
let you do
okay.
your thing. I'm
Challenge
excited to
accepted.
hear your approach on it, and especially with the compact camera, because I do shoot with a compact camera a lot. So I hope you guys are all tuned in. Get your questions ready. You're joining us on the YouTube. You know where to find the chat there if you do have any questions. Maher, I'll let you do your thing, and I'll see you for the Q&A.
Amazing. Okay. Editing. Today is the third part of the series, editing, and let's see if I can control my slides. That would be nice. Okay, there we go. So to start off, I wanted to show you guys these photos. These are all photos that are in the process of getting licensed as pieces of art by a very prestigious art group. Can't talk too much about it, but I wanted to show you guys these photos because they're all taken on the Sony RX100 Mark 7. And I haven't had the camera for that long compared to my other full frame camera. So this was kind of for me a very big win for the RX 100. The second thing is, I believe these photos are only like selected due to the fact that I edited them and the way I edited them. So I can pretty much give full credit to the way I edit and maybe a little bit of the composition. So editing for me is a very powerful passion. And as someone who comes from a background of digital art, I was never that good at it, but I've always loved it. Coloring and editing and photo correcting is a very fascinating subject for me. So hopefully by the end of this event, you will have learned the essentials of how to edit any raw photo in any photo editing software. The agenda for today, we're going to do a quick recap of the last events, and then we're going to talk about the biology's role in editing, and then we're going to do a live edit. So I'm going to go show you guys step by step how I do everything. I've never done this on anything online, and I'm kind of putting all my secrets out there. There's no secrets technically, but I'm going to show you everything, how I get a photo from raw, uncooked to a meal that's hopefully ready to get licensed. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to find style or the idea of style in general. Okay, so previously on the first event, we talked about why this camera is special, like from a psychological point of view, from the kind of user experience, and why I love it so much with all the gear I already own, which we covered too much, and the idea that it kind of frees you from the shackles of photography. And then in the second event, we talked about understanding the limitations of the camera, understanding the limitations of the tool you use in general in order to be able to optimize it and get the most out of it. And we also kind of brushed briefly over the exposure triangle, kind of the technical a little bit of how we can actually capture the ingredients we need in order to optimize the edit. And we also talked about the menu and how I personally use it. We also touched on the fact that you cannot trust your eyes. Your eyes are not to be trusted when it comes to what is physically there. For example, this photo, nothing's moving here, but your brain thinks it's moving because your brain is kind of like a live photo processor. We also talked about some of the accessories and tools I used, as well as the data that the camera collects in order to give you in the editing software. And I also talked about my mission in general when I'm capturing a photo is to capture as much ingredients as possible in order to make it look the way I want to in the editing. So it was kind of the prerequisite to this one. But if you haven't watched it, recommend you watch it. But if you haven't, you'll be fine. And all these tips I'm going to be covering, like 95% of them, are going to apply to any photo that is raw. You can use it with JPEG, but due to the limited amount of data that the JPEG has in compared to the RAW, you can't get as much out of it. All right. So today is part 3, and the rest are on YouTube, on the B&H Event Spaces YouTube. Did you know that when you're on the highway, the tone of your skin is almost exactly the same as a banana peel? But your brain actually processes it in order to make it look like more sense. And we covered a little bit of this last time, but your brain collects 3 cones, small, medium, large, or are blue, green, and red. And then after it collects these data, it kind of uses a filter of blue and yellow. So when you're in the highway, it kind of adjusts that yellow and tones it down so it looks like the person in front of you is not a banana peel. And it's not a coincidence that you will find in almost any editing software these two on the top. And a lot of people are familiar with these, but I think most people who edit underestimate these. With just a few tonal adjustments in these, and a little can go a long way. And again, you have the blue and yellow and the red and green. And this is the tint, which is green and magenta, close enough to kind of red and green, and then the blue and yellow, which is the temperature. With a slight adjustment to the temperature, you can bring a photo to life because the sensor that captures the data that is physically there is not doing exactly what your brain is doing. Your brain kind of looks like this photo on the left. This is a painting. I don't know who it's from, but it's a very probably well-known painter. And they kind of took into consideration what they actually see versus the photo on the right is what is physically there. Due to the exponential like drop of the power of light, you should have something that looks more on the right. But because how the brain works, and we covered a little bit of that in the last one, your brain kind of adds these dimensions and brightness to these areas of where the light is touching the subject. And this is a screenshot from the book. The book is called The Biology of Vision. And we mentioned it also last time, but I painted over it because I wanted to cover the part in the middle. And so far, you should see that the right side and the left side look pretty much the same color. Maybe the slight variation because of the photo I took. I took it with my phone. But when you remove it, your brain thinks that the side on the right is a lot darker than the side on the left. And this is here again, me just covering it with my fingers. And this is exactly the same photo. But when the brain sees this kind of like edge, it uses something called center surround, and it makes the color kind of come out of nowhere. So another example here, the thing inside that donut shape, so inside here, it is completely the same color as the outside the page. But again, because of that same system, you might be seeing the illusion that the inside is actually colored yellow. And it uses kind of the same thing. And this is a software called Procreate. And I use the color picker to click inside the little area and then one outside. And they're pretty much the same, maybe slight variation just due to the lighting and the photo I took. But it is exactly the same. But the brain literally fills in all of that on the inside. And we can create color out of nothing, pretty much. And this is what the brain does. And you can use these tools or kind of glitches, if you may, to make a picture more in your favor and also more like what you have seen in front of you. And you can also use it to enhance certain colors and subdue other colors. Okay, so now let's actually edit. We're going to be editing in these softwares. I'm very fluent in Lightroom Classic, but these other few softwares, I literally just got it and downloaded them and used them a little bit just to show you that these principles pretty much work in every single software. And Lightroom Mobile at the end also to show you that you can even do it on the phone. So let's start with Lightroom Classic. Okay, first, this is the photo, and this is the after. Let's see, where were we? Okay. So we have the first, you have these tools. You in every software, you pretty much see the temperature, tint, and then the exposure. And I usually start with the exposure. And again, I'm kind of trying to like maybe lower it a little bit. It's a little bit overexposed. If you can look at the top here, it says it's clipping at the highlights. Um, and then I use the curve. And usually, sometimes I start with the curve. And the curve here, this is where kind of all the magic happens. And I dropped it a little bit. And if you're moving it around, you'll see the histogram also moving. And if the histogram thing seems kind of confusing, then don't worry about it. And you can also watch the um, last webinar. But instead of using the exposure, highlight, shadows, by using the curve, it kind of gives a more organic transition, and it's kind of more natural. And it literally, so all the way on the left you have the shadows, and on the way on all the right you have the highlights. So this histogram represents the data you have in the photo, pretty much, aka what the camera is seeing. And by making this small S curve, I'm making contrast in a much more smooth and controlled way. And when you're using it, I wish I had like live so I could kind of play around with it, but I wanted to make sure that nothing is like missed in the signal or whatever when we're doing this live. So I kind of usually play around with it and move it around a little bit and kind of see what it does to the photo. And I recommend you kind of do that before you begin. I usually start with the shadows and then I adjust it using the highlights. And this is just with 3 clicks. So you can see here, uh, all I did is change the exposure and do the curve, and this is all happened. Uh, and then obviously we talked about the banana peel thing. So the second thing I do is the temperature. And here I increase the temperature from 4,560 to 4,462. And I'm not going off like specific numbers. I'm just moving it around until it hits like a point where I'm happy with it. And I also adjusted the tint just a little bit, just because it looked more green. And sometimes it looks more green because I'm in a green space where there's a lot of green reflecting in the environment. So adjusting the tint a little bit can go a long way. And this is now before exposure, curve, temperature, and tint. And just with like, I'm pretty much happy with this. And I wanted to push it a little bit further. And what I'm usually doing is going back and forth. I'm kind of like, okay, now I want to go maybe add a little bit more in the highlights. I like this kind of how the light is falling off the hat. So I wanted to increase a little bit. So I pushed it up. And on the technical level, now I lost a lot of information in the shadows, but that's okay. I don't mind it. And it's up to you kind of what style you're going for. But for me, I like that it simplifies the image a little bit more. So I'm happy with this, but we could push it further. So again, I'm trying to have like an essentialist approach. And when I'm using this camera, it kind of goes well with that idea. This way, I'm not spending too much time editing the photo. And to push it a little bit further, I'm gonna very subtly, usually I try to stay away from the other channels. So you have 3 channels in the curve. You have the main like light channel, that's the one we just adjusted. And then you have the green, red, and blue. And it's not a coincidence that these are exactly the cones we have in our eyes. So there's still a little bit of green, and I personally like the little bit of magenta look, the kind of color of purple. So this is completely stylistic, but I'm simply showing you how I edit the photo. And then here's a little bit of the secret sauce. So if you go to detail, and I think a lot of photos can benefit from this, go to masking and then hold Alt or Option on the Mac. And as you're holding this, adjust the mask and drag it a little bit. And as you drag it, you'll start seeing this black and white detail. I'll tell you what this does in a second. So this is just I'm dragging it here to 2 to 3, and you can refine it to the details that you care about, the details that you want to pop. And this looks good for me. I can leave it there. I can see the details in the hat. And once you let go, you probably won't see much. And even if you increase the sharpening, you won't see that much either. But what it does now is instead of the sharpening the noise in the photo, aka in bad or low light, there's a lot of noise. Now it's sharpening only the edges that are having the useful information. And even though this is very subtle and you can't see it, when you do that, your brain focuses more on these more sharpened areas, and it makes the photo kind of more readable. And to push that a little bit further, I dropped the clarity a little bit. Now we're back at the basic tab, and by dropping the clarity a little bit, now it kind of gives it this soft, smooth fall off. So I'm kind of eliminating the details and the areas that I don't care about because I already sharpened the areas that I want. And when I started photography, I would go to the clarity and I usually would pump that thing up sometimes all the way. It looked terrifying sometimes, but I still do that occasionally. But what I do now is I love this dreamy effect. I think like a lot of reality to me feels dreamy, and I can kind of replicate that using the clarity and dropping it. 32 is very generous. Usually a little bit of an amount goes a long way, but because of the kind of simple composition of this photo, it works pretty well. Okay, now crop. Crop is absolutely important again, and it can change the piece completely because it changes the composition. So when you're shooting with a compact camera, some people think, oh, you don't have enough megapixels or whatnot, but trust me, you have enough to crop. And yeah, so just a little bit off doesn't do much, but we didn't remove much, but it does a lot. And here's before, and here's after. So, and some people can might say that the before looks better. It's completely personal preference. And we're gonna get into style a little bit later. But yeah, this is for me can be done. I can go a little bit further if I go to the calibration. And here I'm just kind of giving you some tools to know. We won't dive as deep in the other software simply because I'm not also as fluent in them. But this is just kind of the 80/20 rule. I think we got way more than enough. I'm happy with it, but let's push it a little bit. By dropping the saturation in the blue, I kind of give it a more dramatic feel. And you can increase it also to make it more vibrant and make it more warm. And when it comes to these calibrations, this is actually a section that I haven't found even on the mobile app for Lightroom. And it adjusts each color in relation to different colors. And it's a little bit different than actually changing the color mixture colors. And here we are. And that's usually happens too. After I'm done, I'm like, okay, let me actually add a little bit more exposure and go back. And now I kind of undid the exposure increase. And voila, we're done. Here's before and here's after. And this is both. After, before, and this is kind of both. And this didn't take that long. And again, if you only did the first four things, temperature, exposure, tint, and the curve, that's plenty. Okay, and this is the edited photo that I've done last time. So this is the one I did just this time. And last time I did it, it looked like this. So it looks different. And I think that's okay. And a painter doesn't make the same painting twice. And also it depends on how I felt or the tools I learned and all these things. It doesn't have to be consistent. They will be consistent kind of at the end. That's more of the style talk. We'll dive into that later. But I like this one much better. And also probably because I'm doing a presentation on it, so I probably took my time and maybe was a little bit more careful. And the cool thing about editing is you can kind of copy the settings if you have a photo in the similar setting. I'm gonna uncheck the crop because I don't want it to crop the same, but I want everything else to be the same. And this is the before, and I just did Control C to have this menu, and then Control V, and voila, a little too bright. So I might go back, adjust the exposure, and yeah, done. Okay, a landscape photo. This is the edited version, and these are the settings from last time I edited. So again, it's gonna look a little bit different this time. Here's the unedited photo, and we're gonna adjust the temperature, tint, shadows, exposure, and yeah. So just to kind of bring out kind of the details, I'm kind of getting it ready for the curve because I'm gonna add that contrast and that play on that center surround mechanic in the brain to make it look more sharp. I drop down the shadows uh, in the curve, and then you can also use this tool in Lightroom Classic, which allows you to hover over any area and it would show you the correlating area in the curve. So if you're not sure where that lands, you can use that to kind of figure out where that is. And I want to make the top of the mountain look more bright, not necessarily the sky. So by increasing that, now it kind of looks more 3D. Oh, let's see. And because of the highlights already too bright, I pulled it down a little bit, and I think I'm actually gonna pull it back up after that. So this is before the curve, after the curve. This is just the curve. It gives that like more depth. Okay. And I'm gonna drop the exposure and change the temperature. And now it looks like this. Again, a couple of simple steps that go a long, long way. And this is a two-step process. I'm collecting that data and I know that I want to do this to it or more or less play around with that data to make it look as much as like I want it as possible. Again, I'm going to use the mask and I'm holding Alt and dragging the mask to see which details I want. And then I'm going to sharpen it. And then I'm also playing around with the calibration, adding a little bit and then increasing the exposure again. See, I dropped it and then it increased it again after playing around with the temperature. This is also another thing I like to do is adding masks to add more focus into where I want the focus to be. And at that point, we're kind of going past the essentialist or like the essentials of editing. This is kind of bonus and kind of just showing you how I edit these photos. Oh, let's see. So yeah, I do a linear gradient and I drag it from the bottom and then I drop the exposure and the wait, what did I do here? Linear gradient. Oh yeah, okay. So I dropped this exposure and then did another one and dropped the whites and then now I went back to the curve to adjust that brighter part. So sometimes what I do is add another linear gradient from the top. Let me show you with my mouse from the top to kind of make it brighter and the bottom to be darker. This way I can focus all the attention right in the middle. But since I already have a lot of brightness there, I just went back to the curve and brought that piece back up. And generally you want the curve to look as smooth as possible. If you pull it like aggressively, it's gonna look completely whack. So now we're done. Or not. Something's bothering me in this photo. And it's the distracting aspect. Again, I want the focus to be more on the mountain, and I didn't do that in the thumbnail if you caught that. And that thing is that little, well, I don't know what that is, but this steals the attention of the eye. The brain kind of sees that contrast and goes there. So I want to remove it, and I don't want to use generative AI, just like the healing tool that we've had for years. And I'm just gonna go over this, and now, voila, much better. And now it's not as distracting. And here's our before, and here's our after. And this is the last one I edited. So again, I kind of like the second one a little bit more this time. But again, the environment also plays a role. We'll get into that in a second. Okay, this is a software called DXO Photo Lab. And now we have a photo. Again, I'm not fluent in this one, so please forgive me if I miss something. And I go straight to the curve. I'm gonna drop the shadows to kind of add that contrast. And then I added also the point to keep the highlights in place. I'm dropping down the highlights a little bit more. just so there's more saturation in the reds. And again, another distraction. Color is bright. It's too much. So I'm gonna crop. And I'm not sure if my face is covering this, but this is the fourth panel, and I'm gonna do unconstrained aspect ratio because I just want to remove the bottom. Then I'm gonna go to the crop tool, and for me, this is so much better. And there was also kind of a vignette removal tool that it was on, and I turned that off. So now I have the natural vignette back, which I prefer because it actually does the similar effect to that the mask that I was installing last time. Okay, now of course, now we gotta go to the temperature intent, and I'm increasing the warmth a little bit. And this is our before, and this is our after. Before, after. Again, it's more of like I want the focus to be on that gorgeous red, so I'm kind of removing details from things that distract from it and add contrast, aka using that center surround to make the image pop a little bit more and look in a way more 3D. And this is after. Okay. This is Lightroom Mobile. Again, similar everything pretty much. I tapped with two fingers so I could see the histogram. I like to keep an eye on the histogram because, again, we have established that we can't trust the eyes. Increase the exposure a little bit to get all that data out. This is in Central Park, New York, if you're curious. And the last one was in New York also, and the mountain was in Iceland. Let's see. Now I'm gonna go to my curve. Curve again, a tool that I was very intimidated with at first, but just play around with it and be subtle with it, and a little bit goes a long way. And the curve shows up on the screen, and again, kind of the same S curve, and you can see just how much difference that makes. And it kind of looks a little too loud at first, and it can be for some people, but I like it. We'll adjust the temperature and the masking to make it look better. And again, the masking thing also works on the phone or tablet. You just have to tap and hold on the screen and then drag the mask until it's on the details you want. And then I'm gonna drop the clarity a little bit just to give it that painterly, dreamy look and focus the attention on the things that I'm focused on in when I'm standing there. We're gonna drop the temperature a little bit and done. Maybe, possibly. It's done. It's essentially essentially done. But here's a few more tools in case you are curious. And linear gradient again, dropping the temperature to make it look cooler and moody, and dropping the exposure, clarity, and texture. I don't want to look here. I want the view to be on these gorgeous, stunning colors in the frame and all that stuff. Let's see. And then I made another one from the top and I increased the temperature to give it the warmth of the sun and increase the exposure because the sun was shining and it gives it a kind of a light frame, if you may. And now here's before and after. Before, after. Final result. All right. My least favorite, I mean, a great app that is completely free. It's on all devices pretty much, and it's called Snapseed by Google. And I open it and I see these strange tools, presets. Feel free to use those. I prefer to choose exactly what I want to do. And I open this editing tool. I'm like, oh, everything I'm looking for. I got tuning images, details, curves, white balance, and crop. That's more than enough. First thing I do is the crop because it was bothering me. It was uncentered, so I pulled it down a little bit and framed the little plane and make it look all the rule of thirds and all that good stuff. And then I opened the curve and added some contrast. But when I added the contrast, it looked a little too blue. I was like, this is way too blue. So I went to the temperature and added uh, yellow, aka warmth, to make it look less blue. And then added a little bit tint to make it a little less green. And then something called structure, which I'm like, is that clarity? Possibly. I dropped it a little bit because it's a little bit noisy and I want to get rid of the noise. And I also dropped the saturation because it's still looking a little bit blue. And there's something called ambience also, which I think has to do with the light. So I played around with it. And generally, I want to emphasize this. When I'm adjusting anything, I'm like dragging this thing around and just looking at the screen. I don't want anyone to think that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go and add -10. Yes, this is perfect. No, I actually just kind of swing it around until it looks right. And then I went back and added more tint because it's still looking a little bit green. And here's the before, and here's the after. And yeah, so when you're editing, just make, if you do these four things, and I know there's a big debate out there for people who are like, oh, editing sucks, and like, you don't have to do that. And I can go di like deep dive. I can open the photo on Photoshop after I'm done with my Lightroom processing, and I can go deeper in Lightroom. I used to spend like sometimes an hour and a half editing one photo. And when you go to Photoshop, you can adjust every single color on the scale of every single color. So you can open the red and adjust it on the cyan scale, on the red and blue scale, on the like everything. And you can, again, it will look better, but the essentials are, if you're just trying to get the job done, are these main things: exposure, the curve, and your temperature intent, and it will go a long, long way. A picture is a two-dimensional thing that is kind of tricking the brain into thinking it's three-dimensional. And aside from the fact that we're color correcting from what we see and what the brain actually sees versus what the sensor is capturing, as we established, the data that is there is not the exact data that we actually see. Aside from that, it gives you an emotional dimension. So when you have two dimensions, not only you can make it pop and make it slightly more 3D, but you have the emotional dimension, which we established in the psychology of photography is something that can actually help you tap into your emotions a little bit more. And the way you edit is, in a way, an expression of an emotion and emphasizing what you were looking at the scene. And it tells a unique story from your unique perspective. And when you're using that, when you're kind of on that, that's kind of where the style starts to seep in. And it doesn't only allow you to express more in your photos, but it also allows you to have a bigger capacity for feeling your emotions. So it helps you tune into your emotions a little bit better. And we also established other stuff. Psychology of photography was another workshop we did with B&H. If you look up BH Psychology of Photography, you'll find it. And that's where we talked about how photography actually influences the brain and can help you become more successful in all these things. So it actually helps you become more aware. It refines your awareness and expands your capacity for emotions. Another important thing to keep in mind is the environment you edit in and the light you edit in matters. Again, I like to have all these crazy lights sometimes. It's just fun. But if you're editing in these lights, it will do the same effect that we talked about. It will kind of skew your perception because the brain is processing again, right? And I showed this in the last workshop. That gray circle on the left is the inside of the circle of the O. And the S on the top of the S looks like this shade of gray. You would not guess that. But because of the environment and the center surround system, your brain does all these adjustments. So you want to keep in mind the lighting that you're editing in. And again, all these balls are the same exact color, but by changing the dots in the background, your brain sees a completely different color of a circle. So if you have control over your lights, like smart lights, put it around 6,500 Kelvin. And you just want the light to be as neutral as possible, not too warm, not too cool. This way you can actually adjust. And if you have a monitor, try to calibrate it. This is kind of going again the extra mile, but know that these things are influencing how you see the photos. And this photo, I've been featuring it in almost all my workshops, but this photo is a clear example of why people were seeing this picture on the left and some people were saying the dress was black and blue, is because it was all simply a temperature difference. The one on the left had more temperature on the device or the photo or whatever you were looking at, and maybe even your environment. And the one on the left, wait, I mixed that. The one on the left, yeah, has more temperature. The one on the right has less temperature. It's cooler. That's why you see blue where it's white. And the image, I think, looked kind of like the one in the middle. And because of how the light was hitting it from the back, there was not enough data hitting it directly. And that made the subtle influence of the device that you're using completely give the brain the colors they want and run with it. So keep in mind the environment and keep in mind the devices you're using. All right, let's talk quickly about style. These are photos from, I just took a screenshot of the photos on my Instagram, and I personally don't see a style. Some people tell me, a lot of people tell me actually that I do have a style. I don't see it, and that's okay because you your style is simply you expressing that vision. And the editing tools or the camera tools or the technical tools, these are all things you're just kind of consuming, and then you're basically combining them and to express yourself. And whenever I'm editing, like there's all these little tools that basically stolen from other artists. I've stolen like for example, the clarity thing I've stolen from one artist, the exposure thing, the curve thing. I'm collecting all these things and there's a lot of things I've stolen and ended up discarding. But stealing is kind of the secret to finding style, in my opinion. And this is Pablo Picasso. He said that art is theft. This is from a book called Steal Like an Artist, a book by Austin Kleon, which I'm stealing from right now. And yeah, so steal like an artist. This is a illustration that I really love, and this kind of the family tree of art. Because even if you're stealing and kind of remixing and doing all these things, then it becomes unique. Nothing's original. No one is original. So that should be kind of a relief. But by how you combine these things and combine these tools that stand out to you, and try things and maybe don't like them, so discard them, by default, it becomes unique. Don't worry about unity from piece to piece. What unifies all your work is the fact that you made it. And again, by default, you have a unique perspective that is informed by your unique combination of genetics and epigenetics, aka the environment you grew up in. So by not worrying about it, you can actually get closer to your style. By stealing from other artists, you're collecting the words you need to tell your own unique story. Thank you so much for tuning in to this lovely event and the series of the RX 100. Thank you, Sony. Thank you, B&H. Coming up, potentially we might be doing an RX 100 Mark 7 video. If that's something you're interested in, let us know. And who knows, maybe there will be a Sony 8. Imagine a Sony with USB-C, the flip out screen, the new technology, and the faster chip, and all that good stuff. So if that comes out, hopefully we'll be doing an event as well. I also have another video on my YouTube. That was a year ago, so don't judge. But I dive a little bit deeper into the subject of style. And this is my Instagram. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. This is my YouTube, and I'm putting out content. I haven't been, honestly, because I've been a little bit busy, but I'm cooking a few videos with the RX 100, shooting it in low light. I'm working on a little film, stuff like that. So if you're interested in more content about the RX 100, make sure you find me at MaherZ _. There's another guy named Maherzin who's really famous. So if you don't type it exactly like this, you will never find me. And with that, let's open it for topics of discussion.
Thank you so much, Maher. I'm glad you brought up the light stuff with the ambient light in the room, the LEDs and all of that, because I feel like now everybody wants the LEDs. It looks cool and
Hmm.
it puts you in the zone. I've had to struggle with it myself in moving them around because obviously my
Oh, you changed your
editing
light. Did you change your
monitor.
light?
No, now it's the same. I mean, I change it all
Okay.
the time, but
Okay,
I do
fine.
have it. I do have one, right there, and it's like it puts you in the right zone. But then you're right. It
Hmm.
does. Any light that you have affects you. Sometimes you get sick of having. I have the curtains drawn in here all the time because it's the easiest way. The light coming from my monitor is the only light.
Control the light.
Yeah. I mean, is there any workaround that you found, or is it just best to edit without all the extra lights going on?
I would say maybe try around different devices. If you have different modes on that same device, kind of send it to your phone, do a quick check because probably most people are sending it on Instagram. Also, you have your True Tone now and your night shift. So if you're editing on those, you can definitely guarantee that your your tint and temperature are going to be way off. sometimes I send it and my phone is on night shift. I'm like, what? I
You
would
don't
not
realize it.
make my make my warmth this warm. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I have that on. So change around the device as much as you can, send it around and like take a break, look away, look at a blank wall, don't never look at the sun. That's what I learned from astronomy. The teacher was very deliberate about telling us never to look at the sun, so never look at the sun. And
Yeah, not
yeah,
smart.
play around.
Yeah, and I think that's another great point there is what is going to be the viewing medium? How is it going to be presented? Is it going to be in print? Is it going to be
Hmm.
on screen? If it's on a screen, there's a ton of different types of screens. You have, this is a more matte monitor. Some you have high gloss monitors, and you have various just there's all different kinds of resolutions and all that. So a lot of it, that's when it comes down to looking at the levels and looking at your histograms and
The
looking at your colors and all
histogram.
that, making sure you're calibrated and yada yada yada. But even still, when you go to print, it's a completely different ball game. And if you try to print off your monitor, you're gonna be way off.
Hmm.
Or not, maybe not way off in all cases,
You
but you
can be.
can be. You can be way off. Yeah, there's a lot of times where it's like, who said it? Somebody said it that we had on here, and it was like, holding up a piece of white paper, and it's like, if you hold up a piece of white paper, it's like, is it really white or is it not white? And it's like, then you're like, oh wow. And then you look at white on the screen, it's like, okay, white paper and white on the screen are not the same, because that's when it gets down into luminosity and all the
Light from the back and all that. Yeah.
yeah, it's like there's so many factors that play into it. It's one of those things where it's like, it's very few absolutes and constants. A lot of it is situational.
Yeah. And we just need to mitigate it. One thing I
Yeah.
do is I have a monitor that supports sRGB mode, which is kind of like the standard, like the as center as possible, I believe, in terms of like different devices. Because if it looks okay on sRGB, then all these side things kind of don't variate too far.
Mhm. Yeah. A lot to know, a lot to know. Stay knowledgeable, people. Stay thirsty, hungry for knowledge. You always got to be a student of the game. I learn stuff all the time. I've never let myself get to that point where I think I know too much. Did have a question come in. I'm on a Samsung phone and monitor while my partner is on an iPhone and a Mac. Broken household. The same image looks different between all. So which should I edit for? Great question, visual modulations. I like this one.
Nice, nice.
I'm gonna throw my answer out real quick.
Yes, please.
The
Can I
partner's
ask
got to get rid
a
of this.
clarification?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean edit for? Like, edit which device
So if
edit
you
for? Is that what they mean?
so yeah, so if you have, you have multiple devices, it's almost like which one
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
reigns supreme. Which one can you trust?
Ooh,
Uh I want to make
that's
a joke and
interesting.
say get rid of the no, I'm not going to, but
Get rid
get rid of one instead of the other. No,
uh,
but this is a great question because it's like we do run into this. You don't know who's going to be viewing from what
mhm, mhm.
and how do you know which is the most true? Is there anything you follow?
Uh, so fun fact, I believe that the iPhone screens are actually made by Samsung. So it's kind of like more of the Samsung flair. And it depends on what the thing is, honestly. And it depends on who your audience is. If you think your audience mostly has iPhone, then do that. If the audience you want to impress is more on Samsung, then do that. And also get a maybe a monitor calibrator. One of these can like kind of center both of them to a much more neutral flavor, if you may. But I don't. This is where the sRGB thing comes in. If you edit for sRGB or sRGB, then you can get a little bit to the left on the one device and a little bit to the right on the other device. But if I were to guess, I'm a very big fan of both devices. I would actually use Samsung if it wasn't for like the ecosystem and the
Mhm.
iMessage and the FaceTime and all these all these things. But I love them as devices. But I actually believe Samsung Note is probably one of the best phones that have ever been existing. A hot take here, but Samsung does have a tendency to kind of add a little pizzazz and pop to the photos. So if I were to guess, I would say that the Windows, no, sorry, that the iPhone and Mac are probably closer to sRGB.
Okay. And I'm gonna give my take on this, my unsolicited advice. Um, I never pay attention to the phone. because the phone for me is kind of just, hey, that's the vehicle that you get it out to people. But I'm not printing from my phone. I'm not sending it to a lab from my phone. I'm not emailing it to anybody. I'm not uploading to my website from a phone. I'm not doing anything from my phone except for viewing. So I'm more concerned with the actual file that I have. And that's when I'm paying attention to all my graphs and my charts and my histograms and all of that stuff, which gives you a pretty, once you learn how to read that stuff, it gives you a pretty good idea. And I kind of use it as like checks and balances. I can look at my monitor, and if you are calibrating your monitor regularly, then you can trust your monitor. If I kind of feel like I might not really, I might want like an extra opinion on it, so to speak, then I will pull up my histograms and look. There's sometimes you edit at night and you look at it in the day and you're like, maybe the tint's a little off, or maybe I went a little too far in one direction with my color grading or something like that. And that's where I can go in, and it's easy when you know how to read your histograms and you're able to say, okay, my reds are peaking a little bit in the shadows. I want to bring those down a little bit. And that's when I go into charts and graphs and all that, the cool histogram stuff. But I say go for the computer. Go for it's like the old adage, what editing in camera or editing on your your phone or your phone or your camera versus your computer. Your computer has the biggest, most powerful processor. It has the bigger screen. So I say that's gonna reign supreme. I'm gonna move on to a question here from David. Where do I purchase a neutral light to do my editing in? I know a place. I know a place
I
that
I,
sells
I
all.
kind of know a place that has a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
Uh,
I,
what you're looking for is bias lighting. I believe it's called bias lighting, and that's usually standard at 6,500. So if you're looking to splurge a little bit more, I would get a smart light because smart lights you can adjust the temperature exactly. So you can have your little mood bedazzles, and when you're editing, you can adjust the light and make it 6,500. But like if you look up bias lighting on B&H, you will definitely find a few things. Something I also just remembered, a way that I kind of reset my eyes or brain is I would grab the tint or the temperature and drag it all the way down. I drag it all the way to the opposite extremes and just kind of like just try to break my brain pretty much. And then as I move closer, then I kind of like, okay, it's probably still worn. My synapses are still firing, so it's probably worn out. So I'm gonna adjust it a little bit lower. So yeah, just play around with it, and you might be able to kind of get a better feel for it. And I'll let you answer the question about where you can purchase
I'm
neutral
actually
lights.
going
I'm
to
sure you
jump on
have.
jump on your last point because I agree with that. I think a great way is to take the sliders. I do the same thing, and all the way to the left, all the way to the right, see how they affect the image. Because sometimes it's like when you just start a little bit, you drive yourself crazy. And you stop trusting your own eyesight, which is the most frustrating thing during editing, is not trusting what you see. And you're
Yeah.
like, wait, is this? And then you start looking at the values, and you're like, okay, it looks a little green, and then you look and your tint is up towards magenta, like plus 25, and you're like, wait, but how does it look green? Wait, do I need to go further? And so then you start driving yourself crazy. So I agree. Left, right, kind of just wiggle it all around. And this is also a great way to learn all the sliders. If there's something that you don't know what it does, especially curves. I feel like a lot of people don't know how to properly use curves, and curves can be such a powerful tool to hone in on the right feel of an image. And it's great to just play around with stuff and see what it actually does and the effect that it has. And so, yeah, I, as far as a neutral light, I told you I edit in no light.
Hey,
When
we got a
I
link.
when I edit, it's like complete darkness, and the only thing I'm getting is the screen. When I do my serious editing, I do like to have the mood lights on. We are gonna get a link dropped in here for some bias lighting. Thank you to my team for dropping that link in there. So if anybody wants to look up some bias lighting, we did drop a link for that there. You can always check that out on our website. But Maher, it looks
Ma-
like we got through the questions, man. See, you did. You got me in the editing mode,
Okay.
which I was
Did
in
you
I
open
was in
Lightroom?
shooting mode before, and not usually I'm usually, I prefer to be in the shooting mode, not the editing mode, because
Okay.
editing
Okay.
mode is just long, it's grueling, it's grinding, but you got me there.
I think this is a success. If I may also say something, one of the comments about the psychology of photography. If you like the psychology of photography, you're gonna love The Selfish Photographer. This is kind of the part two of the psychology of photography. Someone was commenting on that in the chat. So
Awesome.
stay tuned for that one. I'm gonna be going all out on that one. So be
Awesome.
tuned.
Awesome. Well, Maher, huge thank you to you, of course, also to Sony for hosting today's event and this series, and to all of our viewers out there. As usual, we love having you guys all tune in and become part of the show. More fun with when we get questions, right? We don't want to sit here and just talk to each other or talk to a screen. So
You don't want to
keep
talk
it
to me.
interactive. Always keep learning and stay motivated. That is all we have for you for now. Another edition of the B&H Event Space in the books. Catch y'all next time.